Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our main card opener for UFC 321. In this matchup, we have Alexander Rakic taking on Azamat Murzakanov. Rakic is 14-5 as a professional, 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Meanwhile, Murzakanov is 15-0 as a professional, so obviously he's 5-0 in his last 5 fights. For Rakic, honestly on a pretty rough skid right now. Currently on a 3 fight skid. His last win was over 4.5 years ago to Thiago Santos, who's no longer in the UFC. And then the fight before that, he defeated Anthony Smith, who is now since retired, and that fight was over 5 years ago now. Now, currently speaking, as I mentioned, he's on a 3 fight skid, but you look at who he's lost to, right? He lost to Jan Blachowicz roughly 3.5 years ago, but he was looking pretty good in that fight up until the third round where he suffered the fight-ending knee injury. Then eventually comes back at UFC 300 and looks great against Yuri Prohaska and was winning that fight until, Yuri does his thing, pulls off a comeback, and finishes Rakic in the second round. And then most recently at UFC 308, loses to a determined Magomed Ankalaev. So you look at it, that's 3 former champions that he's fought, and all 3 of them, at least to my opinion, were competitive fights. And some of them were fights it looks like he was winning. Meanwhile, for Murzakanov, a very, very good fighter in the light heavyweight division, and I would say more or less the dark horse of the light heavyweight division. It's just unfortunate not too many people know about him. It's just because he's kind of inactive. Murzakanov usually has 1 fight per year. This will be the first time he's ever fought more than once a year in the UFC. Now, looking at his 5 fights, he beat Tufu Njoku via TKO, then Devin Clark via TKO, decision win over Dustin Jacoby, and then last August he TKO'd Alonzo Menefield, and then most recently this year, he TKOs Brenton Ribeiro in UFC 316 this June. Now, before I made this video, I watched that new UFC video about Murzakanov's fights, or specifically all of his knockouts, including his Contender Series fight. And one thing about him that is pretty interesting is you look at Murzakanov, he's a lot more of a deceptive athlete. You kind of look at Murzakanov and you go, kind of looks like an average dude, if I'm being honest. I know, that's not saying he doesn't have muscles or like he looks fat or something. He just kind of has like an average build. He doesn't look that assuming. Kind of like Fedor Emelianenko. Or for those of you who don't know, you should look him up. Fedor fought in heavyweight MMA, and he didn't look like the pinnacle of athleticism and all that. I mean, he kind of had a belly, he kind of looked like a barrel at times, but boy, that motherfucker could beat just about everybody who was put in front of him for a long, long time. Because while he didn't look like an athlete per se, he had devastating timing, technique, cold composure, or being able to, weather bad storms, especially say, Kevin Randleman, dropped him on his head. The point I'm trying to make is Murzakanov is very similar to that. You look at Murzakanov, as I said, he doesn't look like the best UFC athlete at light heavyweight, doesn't look shredded to the gills and all that stuff. Just shredded beyond belief. But what he does have is very quick hand speed, really good timing, and really good accuracy. Now, Murzakanov fights out of southpaw, and you notice one of his, I would say the technique that he goes to the well a lot is kind of that dipping, grab the leg, go for an overhand left. I had to switch it to kind of show the emphasis of what I mean. But you can see it a lot. He does grab the leg and then fire off an overhand left. And also got really good knees to the body, really good jump knees. That's actually one of the things I like about Murzakanov. He strikes or his diversity in his strikes are absolutely beautiful to watch, whether it be his hooks to the body, knee to the body, knee to the head, or his counter left hands / his intercepting left hands. What I mean is he will sometimes let an opponent come to him and then blast him with the left hand, or as he's coming forward and his opponents try to counter, then he'll intercept with a left hand. So there's a bit of a difference. Either way, though, Mirzakanov's timing is spectacular, especially when he's fighting into mid to close range. Now for Mirzakhanov, he does often give a size and reach disadvantage to his opponents, and also usually a size disadvantage at being a 5'10" light heavyweight with a 71.5-inch reach. Mirzakhanov is often the smaller man against most of his opposition. That is going to come into play big time in this fight with Rakic, because Rakic, dude, looks like a heavyweight in there. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked he's not fought at heavyweight yet. But Rakic, 6'4", with a 78-inch reach. Now, for Alexander Rakic, he's always looked like a guy who would fight for gold eventually, especially early in his career when he got that spinning back fist knockout over Devin Clark, and especially when Rakic, knocked out Jimmy Manua with a head kick, and it looked like he just kicked his soul out of him and killed him. So to this day, I think that might be the most violent head kick KO I've ever seen. Now, one thing about Rakic's approach, though, is besides those two knockouts, he's often quite measured and more of a neutralizer. Rakic often utilizes his height and reach to great effect, and his leg kicks are crushing. I think, honestly, Rakic, besides Alex Pereira, might have the most devastating leg kicks in the division. And Rakic just kicks like a horse, I think. More specifically, like you watched the Anthony Smith fight where he turned Smith's legs into ground beef. Or, like at Rakic's fight with Yuri Prohaska where he was mangling the calf of Prohaska for vast majority of their fight for as long as it lasted. Unfortunately for Rakic, he does have a big weakness, I find. It's that if the fight is brought to him, he tends to freeze up a bit. What I mean is, you look at Yuri, who honestly had absolutely no respect for Rakic's power and just kept fighting him. Just kept getting in Rakic's face, kept throwing out offense. And eventually, Rakic was just simply overwhelmed and got caught straight in the chin by Yuri's 1-2, and then eventually that led to TKO. Or you look at his fight with Magomed Ankalaev, where Rakic had a good first round, and I thought he won the first round. But then Magomed Ankalaev just started pressuring him using the clinch, making Rakic pay whenever Rakic goes for just naked leg kicks / body kicks. If a fighter is able to bring the fight to Rakic and is able to kind of ward off the noticeable height and reach advantage that Rakic normally has over his opponents, then Rakic can be stalled out at times and be lulled into inactivity. Now, that being said, Murzakanov has his own issues, more specifically his cardio. As watching all of his UFC fights, Murzakanov tends to fade around the halfway point of round number 2. Now, Murzakanov does have late round finishes, like Devin Clark was in the 3rd round, Menafield was in the 2nd round and onward. The finish to Menafield was in the 2nd round. But you look at it, Mirzakanov's much better in the 1st round, like most fighters are. And it's not like he falls off a cliff after the 2nd round. But you do notice that Mirzakanov's output and defensive lapses start getting more progressively bigger as the fight goes on. Like, for example, you watch Menafield's debut to Nchukwi. By that 2nd round, Murzakanov just starts having his hands down by his waist. He occasionally brings them up and just leaves him open to getting clipped multiple times. And while Murzakanov has seemingly gotten better fight by fight and clear improvements, he has some defensive lapses. Now, not all of it is his fault. It is like fighting because he's fighting in a very athletic-based division. And there is some concerns I have for Murzakanov that if Devin Clark landing that head kick in their fight, I can 100% see Rakic landing something very similar and more fight ending, if I'm being honest. Because, like I said, Rakic's kicks are devastating. And anybody who's picking Murzakanov, I'm going to leave this as a fair warning. if Rakic can and probably will catch him with a head kick sooner or later in the fight, I do see that happening. Like I said, if Devin Clark can, I for sure think a kicker like Rakic can and can hurt Murzakanov badly. Now, Murzakanov has a pretty good chin. He did eat the head kick flush, and while he nearly did fall all kind of face first, he was able to collect himself and then embrace the grind. That means, and Murzakanov is pretty good at fighting through exhaustion and using his clinch when need be. He does have some wrestling to him, and he's pretty good positionally and top pressure. More so when Murzakanov has an opponent hurt and then he's on top and he's transitioning from different positions, more so in an access to land even more devastating and accurate ground and pound. Now, looking at the odds for this fight, is essentially another pick'em. Rakic is minus 102, while Murzakanov is minus 118. I think it's more so, Rakic is on this 3-fight skid now. Where does that put him mentally now? And, Rakic 3-fight skid now. And where is he mentally? While Murzakanov is riding high, 15 fights, 15 wins, most of them by finish. The way I see this fight, I see paths of victory, not so much for both guys, but while I think Murzakanov is going to hurt Rakic majority of this fight, I also see Rakic, if he plays smart and fights at distance, hurting Murzakanov badly in this fight. Because Murzakanov is susceptible to body kicks as well. And as I'm sure I'm to sound like a broken record, Rakic's kicks are devastating. But you have to understand, you have to watch some of Rakic's fights and see those devastating kicks in action to understand why I'm putting such emphasis on them. I said he must have hated Anthony Smith's leg or something, because Anthony Smith was hobbling by the end of that fight. Or, as I said, Yuri's legs were compromised, and it seemed that was what Rakic was doing to Ankalaev in the first round as well. But I think I've got to go with Azamat Murzakanov. I've seen that Murzakanov is much more durable and has survived much worse shots, while Rakic, I'm not going to say is chinny, especially at light heavyweight. It's not so much chinny as much as, this is a power, you deal with a lot of power hitters in this division. But Murzakanov has the right combination of power, accuracy, timing, and ability to know his limitations when it comes to his physical tools, and yet use them to his advantage. I think Murzakanov is going to be playing bull to Rakic's matador, and most of it's going to be, I think Murzakanov is going to try and corral Rakic around the cage and or around the black line, and then start firing off those big accurate overhand lefts, trying some combinations, dips to the body Murzakanov dips to the body with his jab or cross. Even firing some knees up the middle or devastating body kicks as well. There is some concern I have because Rakic being a neutralizer, I can see there are going to be moments of lull in the action where both Murzakanov and Rakic kind of hand fight and trade leg kicks or body kicks, and then just sudden explosions in action. I can't see that happening in this fight. But overall, I'm going to go with Azamat Murzakanov, and I'm going to pick him via TKO. His timing and power is just so devastating in this division that I see him catching Rakic eventually in this fight and leading towards a ground and pound finish. So, once again, my official prediction, I'm going to go with Azamat Murzakanov, and I'm picking him via TKO. But with that being said, that's been my prediction of this fight. If you like the video, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Do you think Murzakanov is the dark horse of the division, or do you think Rakic will be able to right the ship? Honestly, I would love to hear anybody's opinion on that. I do love hearing my subscribers, non-subscribers' opinions in the comments. But with that being said, next up, I'll be breaking down Alexander Volkov versus Jailton Almeida. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care.